unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity. And today's guest lives at the intersection of craft and sound and story. And if you've ever wondered what happens when actually making the instrument becomes part of the art, part of the music, then this conversation is for you. And we're going to invite you to slow down a little bit. We'll listen to some music. We'll sit inside the mystery of music making and actually making the musical machine. My guest is Martin Maudal.
Living on the corner of bedlam and squalor, trying to keep my soul and still make a dollar. Not beat by the pimps, no took by the thieves. Oh, to look in the mirror, not see a hole.
Martin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark.
Martin is a renowned luthier. I don't use that word a lot, so I wanted to make sure I pronounced it.
First time somebody called me, I thought,
Songwriter, producer, and he's with a great band called Baldy Crawlers. And we're going to talk about some music, folk, Americana, jazz. So Martin is the founder of Maudal Musical Machines, this hand-built electric resonator guitars. So there's a lot going on with Martin and his creativity, and that's why we wanted to bring him on the show. Martin, first of all, when the craft is the muse, the inspiration of the music, you're not only making the guitar, you're playing it in the band and the songs. Bring us into that world and what point you said, hey, this is more than a project. This is really a calling.
That's actually, that is a tricky moment. It almost sneaks up on you and you don't really notice it happening. As I mentioned, it was like a harebrained scheme to use these videos that I was making. They were just simple videos with a couple of friends and playing, just jamming out on some simple idea or another. But it put the instrument in context. Instead of a video with somebody twiddling knobs and going, when you do this, it sounds like this. I'm sitting there, there's 10 million of those. I just thought putting it into the context of the music that it makes would help. And so that was as far as it started. That's where it started. But then music was my first love. My mom was a folk singer. There was always a guitar in the house, and I started plunking on it. The first things I ever figured out were Creedence Clearwater bass lines. And on her left-handed guitar, left-handed Martin 008T, be specific. But so it had been there, and I went to Berklee College of Music for drums and arrangement and composition and such. And so drums were my main instrument, and it's just a weird, windy path that brought me to this, because I started writing more songs and I was in New York. And if you ever start a luthier on talking about his craft, you can't get him to shut up. And there were plenty of people in New York who would talk about it. And I had just heard this sound. It was the sound of a resonator guitar. Anybody who's heard the soundtrack for like Ry Cooder's type soundtracks, where you hear that sort of nasally slide tone, everybody's familiar with that. Or if you listen to bluegrass at all, you know that sound. It was originally designed to try to compete with banjos for volume, because regular guitars were not loud enough. It failed miserably at that, but it has such a great sound that it just found its home. And I was hearing that sound for these songs I was writing. And at the time I was doing open mics in New York and trying to do the singer-songwriter thing. And it just sounded like these songs needed that sound. And I thought, well, how hard could it be? It's crazy though, because I drew a picture, and first it was the neurons firing in my head on what I was seeing in my head. I drew a line drawing, and then I started buttonholing all the luthiers I could find in New York, and there are plenty, really fantastic world-class ones, who would hold still long enough for me to ask questions. And literally, and this totally literally 9 months of gestating, and it came out, the first one, better than I had any right to expect. It was this drawing, and then it was some pieces of wood, and then it was some metal objects got tacked onto that, and it's a mixed media sculpture. And then one day I put strings on it and tuned it up and played a chord for the first time. And it literally, in that moment, transformed into something else entirely. It came in that moment a musical instrument. And that moment right there was pretty intense for me right there. But right hard on the heels of that was, if I did this well enough, if I did it right, 200 years from now, some person could pick it up, music I can't even imagine, and never heard it. And that was why I built the second one, the third one.
Then it just kept going. And you mentioned just now the actual sort of feeling, the sound leading the music. So long before it's a quote unquote song, you felt it, you had that. And let me connect that then to the present day, your new single, Boy. You said started out with not just this concept or the lyric, but this feeling. You said there was music before the words.
Your back is a road boy, a road for your shadow, and all of the darkness in the world to cross is paved with memories of the world's heartbreaking loss. Your mind is a bridge, boy, a bridge for your story, and all of the tales that the world can tell. They're fueled by
What happens with your creativity when you let that sound lead before there's a story, or kind of leads your interpretation of what becomes a song?
I would say early on, that was probably what happened most often, because I was noodling with a guitar every moment that I wasn't doing something else. And I call it noodling just simply because, and I do that in the shop too, I noodle all day. Because if I put some serious name to it, that actually will get in the way. If I'm just free enough to just fiddle and noodle, and so something would then come up, and there's a type of chord, a minor, a major, or a whatever type of chord it might be, then leads to another one. And that there is an emotional feeling to that. I think most people are probably familiar with why minor sounds sad and why straight major is happy. But then there are all these fine distinctions and other types of chords that you can make use of that make it a little bit more nuanced. So that feeling would be there. And then, I don't know, I was doing something else entirely. And that first line, "Your back is a road boy," just popped in. And I would say probably for a songwriter, the most important thing you can possibly be doing is leave a little part of your brain paying attention all the time, basically. It's you're just paying attention and watching and listening for a sound off in the distance or something. Those are all metaphors. There's almost no real words you can put to it that are the literal thing. If
Yes.
you just have your attention up. And so something like that pops up and it was like, bing, that's a starting point. I don't know what it means yet. So what is this road? Oh, a road for your shadow. Ooh, darker. But it evokes something. And so I knew I had a beginning. And once I have a beginning, it's a lot easier to just let it run. And that's what I did.
Yes.
Once I had a road for your shadow part, that's when I sat down with a pen and paper. And actually don't my cell phone, and
Yes.
I usually use email for drafts. So I started, and that's the beginning of most ideas. Although others, there's another song called The Gardener, which was words first. That was just that's a whole other story, but
Right.
it's another story song.
There you go. and then releasing it as Baldy Crawlers. You call it not so much a group, but a musical collective. I love the distinction there of co-collaborators. And thinking about the craft that you're describing, in what way does the instrument itself become another collaborator, not just another member of the group?
No, it absolutely does, because the sound of the instrument can lend itself. Any player who, has the how many guitars do you need? One more.
Yes.
Completely understands.
I'll be going to an open mic tonight where there's about 20 of those guys.
That's sure. Okay. And they're fun. They're fun to talk to because they can tell you why each instrument has its voice. There are a ton of good instruments, lots and lots of good instruments, and there are some really darn good instruments. And then there are some great instruments that don't just have a tone. What they have is sensitivity to every nuance of what the player does. And a really good player can pick up an instrument and know within 30 seconds whether that instrument's going to be able to really be their voice. And so, yes, they do have their own characteristics, their own sound, a vibe and a feel. And so sometimes an instrument I'm building and a song I'm writing are happening concurrent a little bit at the same time. Oh, I know what this one needs to go to. And sometimes not. Sometimes there's just a song that's been around for a while and all of a sudden this guitar comes up and, oh yeah, okay, let's try it, see what happens. That's good. It's not always the same. It's not the same thing every time. But I would say for this one over here.
This is a good time to introduce one of these collaborators. You've got a guitar nearby. Let's talk about the materials, design, resonance. That's a beauty.
Yeah, this is if you can count pegs, tuning pegs, this is a 12-string, and it's a 12-string resonator. It's primarily it has an acoustic sound, not in tune. I usually leave it loose as it's sitting around in the mountains. At any rate, it has this 12-string resonator sound, which is at once nasally, but also very sonorous. And so this one lent itself to two songs that I just recently did. One of them is going to be the next release, which is called Bedlam and Squalor. And it's a sweeter song than it sounds. And the other was another one that's also coming up called Orbeline and the Black Widow. And that's a cautionary folk tale laid on top of some salsa jazz, which is really going to be interesting. But that's how it works. Sometimes it's I know what this instrument is going to do, and sometimes the song calls out for something else.
It's interesting you say that because I was reading about the latest Boy, dreamlike space. There's a lot of maybe silence speaking to it, but I love how you describe the layers of the song, that it just keeps building on itself and maybe allows the listener to hear a little bit something different every time.
Yeah, I hope so. A lot of the good music that I go back to again and again that I have my whole life is like that. Personally, really love music that the message might not be obvious, but the message is there. I like music that has something to say, and it often is up to the listener to decide what it's saying to them. And and as you say, you go back to it, and there might be another aspect of it that jumps out, or another meaning because of what's going on in your life at the time, things like that. So, boy, I hope is like that for people. It is for me. I've gone back a number of times and listened and heard something entirely else. Speaking of which,
yes,
guitar.
Yeah, let's meet another friend. Gorgeous.
Mark Weller played all of the electric parts. This is called Snow on Mount Baldy. That's Mount Baldy.
I love that. Yes, on the guitar.
That's right. Yeah, so that's actually the sound hole, or it's a semi-hollow body guitar with a few little tricks and stuff inside that if you've ever heard of a corked bat, you know why the baseball jumps off of a corked bat. This is like a corked guitar. It doesn't have cork in it, but it has a very light red wood in it that acts as a springboard for the bridge. So it's like you hit it and it just pops.
Yeah.
It's literally leap off the guitar, which is really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And Mark did such a wonderful job in this song. It just, all of his playing was really thoughtful. He never did anything that I expected to happen next. It went in different directions, and I hope that that brings people along with it. It did me when I hear the final thing on what he does, some things that are, it never, as I've seen people write about it, they're much better talking about it than I am. but never gets in the way of Elizabeth. It always seems to be like a call and response with her vocals, and they both support each other really well in a way that I think is unique in a lot of music you hear today.
Yes. We've been talking about the instrument and the craft with Martin Maudal. Martin, I was also watching a great documentary and your workshop, your workspace. We creatives often are very proud of where we do our creative work. And wow, there's a lot going on in your workshop, your workspace. Tell us about that environment. I assume this is in the shadows of Baldy, or at least somewhere in the Northern
Actually,
California.
that documentary was some time ago, and it was in Claremont, California.
Claremont, okay.
And on 10th Street and Indian Hill, it's right by Memorial Park if you're a Claremont guy. And it sits underneath a 300-plus-year-old oak. And to me, that was my favorite part about it. That it's just such an uninspiring tree. It covers like 3 properties. It's just huge. And it's a little carriage house that was actually built, gosh, I don't know, at least 100 plus years. It was there before the house that was there, and the house was there a long time. Having a place to work in that has that kind of history is pretty cool. And, I make a lot of the tools that I use, and especially that in particular. And that's in fact why I started using trees, the wood that I collected working for a tree crew in Claremont. Because it's a college town, they have lots of really nice trees growing and stuff. There's a couple of different kinds of maple and walnut and alder and ash and some weird things that I tried using, like flowering pear, because it's really interesting. It's just, why not?
Why not?
But the main thing is I couldn't afford all these fancy hardwoods and found woods. And so I was actually pretty early in the whole alternative tone wood thing by virtue of necessity. That's the thing. So it's not a fancy shop, and the shop I have now is not particularly fancy looking. But now I'm on the north side of the San Gabriel Mountains.
Okay.
Just a little bit down from Wrightwood, but it's more open space. It's right in the edge of Pinyon Pine and Chaparral, High Chaparral. And so there's more open space around, and I've got 2 outside sheds, another part of the shop in the back of the house, and a detail shop inside the house. And so it entails a lot of walking.
Yes.
Lots
Lots of character. It's like watching a cooking show. You get to see all the ingredients behind the work, not just the finished product. It's good.
Sometimes I try to keep the camera close on me because they'll see the mess behind me. So seriously, for me, it's if my shop is neat, it's because I'm not doing any work, and it's probably not.
There you go. It doesn't have that productivity. Getting back to the music and even the stories in the music, you talked about the empathy and humanity and life. Some people, certainly in folk and Americana, there's a social commentary often in the music. Where do you feel you want these songs to sit when we listen? That emotional response, the heart, not the brain.
For me, just the word empathy, I want people to understand themselves and maybe the others around them through what the songs make you feel. There are some songs like Bring Me a Flower is one of the ones that I'm going to play. Yes. And that was more of a direct message than a lot of the songs that I do. But for me, just thinking about it brings up a good deal of pain. Empathy is not easy.
Oh, bring me a flower, thou dark mountain watcher. I'll bring you myself and I'll grant you a boon. I can see that you're lonely all the way across the water of the lake in the valley bright under the moon. They say that you've been there on the ridge over centuries. They say that you've seen when the times are afraid. Yes, and I feel the same as the mist that surrounds you on the ridge in the mountains of Santa Lucia. Highway vigilantes oscuros highway.
If you're going to put yourselves in the shoes of people who have had to deal with the fear that who knows how many by now, but many people have felt coming to this country because they believed in who we are. They believed in what we have to offer as a place for them to live their lives and make a good life and contribute to a society that they care about. Otherwise, there are a lot of other choices. They could go other places and they choose here. And so empathy isn't easy, and we're all very busy people. And so anything that can make someone stop for a few moments and feel what others are going through a tale, a story like this is worth something to me.
Yeah.
And I think music has, for a long time, fulfilled that role in society. It's not just a mirror for who we are, but also maybe a mirror for who we could be who we want to be. I know, because of the travels that I've done in this country, that most people want to feel about other people the way I do. I live my life pretty independently and by the rules that I set for myself. Some might even call it a libertarian, but I also understand that the way I live is absolutely impossible without the society and the culture that I live within. And also how boring if we weren't I won't call it a melting pot. It's more of a gumbo because things still
is.
maintain their identity.
There you go. You still have the individual flavors.
Within the soup. I lived in New York for 10 years and I learned an awful lot about that. Ride a subway every day and you're going to learn about gumbo and empathy.
I love that. Having my home state of Louisiana, I can relate to the gumbo analogy, and I can't wait to
Absolutely.
have more of my friends connect that to a New York City subway, something that I'm sure no one in Cajun country has ever tried. So I love that connection. Thanks for bringing that
Well,
up.
I've been to New Orleans a couple of times too,
Yes.
and you understand living side by side with
There you go.
people who do things differently than you.
Yes, a lot of flavors of life on Bourbon
Amen.
Street
Yeah.
for sure. I've been talking to Martin Maudal. Martin, where can people find more about Baldy Crawlers, but also Maudal Musical Machines?
We have a pretty good sized internet presence these days. The simple thing is Google Maudal Musical Machines. That's Maudal. And you'll see a lot of pictures and links to our home on Facebook. Same with Baldy Crawlers. There's a lot more people who have been interested in it just lately, which is pretty thrilling for me.
Yes.
I got to tell you. You can find us on Facebook. If you do at Maudal Musical Machines, you can find us on Instagram. There's a lot of posting and a lot of shorts about the process of the guitars, but also the songs and the music. When bouncing around between those things, you start to see this knitted together thing where the music and the instruments collide.
Yes. I love that.
Intersect.
Yes. And as we close, Martin, a lot of people listening to this podcast, they're not only creative spirits, but they're also trying to, quote, make a living with their creativity. And I wondered about that side of your work. We talked about the visibility on social media and so forth, but what about marketing your craft? It's great to have that visibility, but are you able to really then turn that following into a business following? And how does that working for you?
The harebrained scheme was to have these two halves of the thing feed each other. And the instruments that are billed are expensive and by necessity. At the beginning, a lot of people asked if I could do less expensive things, but there are a lot of people who have CNC machines and can crank them out very inexpensively. My only choice was to do what I actually love doing anyway, and that was try to make each one a work of art. And so where it intersected with the music was the original idea was just using the music to market those guitars. And it still works like that. If I do a song and people listen to it and they hear and see the guitar that I'm literally selling right now, and it helps sell it, then that fuels a good bit of activity for the coming few months. So I could get back in the studio. I can record more of the songs. I have a backlog waiting to do. And so it feeds itself. I don't know if that's a model that a lot of people could do, but the best thing that I could maybe offer out of that for people who are trying to make a living in art, whatever it is, to find your own passions and your own place where you sit within it. The question of what I want people to feel, where I want that to sit with them, was really apt for this, because that tells you where to put it, whatever art that you're pursuing. This business model, it's working now and has for a little while, but also just a word of caution, and that's that I had to go through years, literally, of some pretty serious difficulty, fluttering around on the edge of poverty a lot of times. And so having a support system with your friends and family is, friends who understand what you're trying to do and understand that puts you in some difficulty at
Sure.
times.
Yes.
So support system around you is incredibly important, because I never would have gotten to a point of being able to sell more than one instrument in an entire year without those people. Another thing that I'll do right now is I'll just talk about, for just a moment, our own means of keeping ourselves healthy and spiritually, emotionally, physically. I do a meditation called Vipassana meditation, and the best thing you can get out of it, first of all, is attention span. It takes literally months to do a guitar, and before doing this meditation, I'm not sure I would have had the wherewithal to be able to stick with an idea long enough to do this. So that is an incredibly important thing, whether it's that particular type of meditation or other means of keeping yourself focused and stuff through all of the times that you're going to have, because you're going to feel everything there is to feel.
Yeah.
Things like that are maybe even more important than trying to figure out some business plan. For me, it's actually the case.
So true. Martin, can't thank you enough for sharing that sort of personal insight, because oftentimes we see the exterior of the creativity and the creative success and the output, but we don't see what's under the hood or what's behind the story. And I really appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes. My guest has been Martin Maudal. Martin, what a great conversation. Luthier, songwriter, producer. I love it all. I think we've covered all of those. Here we are.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Yes. And listeners, this is the idea that we try to espouse on this podcast. And not only learning about our creative craft and the business of creativity, the lessons for whether you're founding a company or whether you're trying to publish books and music. But we try to cover it all on this podcast, and we travel around the world talking to creative practitioners about their craft and about the sounds and the stories that they're trying to create. So come back again next time, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast, rate and review us, to give us the feedback to keep us going around the world, to talk to those about how we get inspired, how we organize ideas, and most of all, how we create the confidence and the connections to launch our work out into the world. So until next time, I'm Mark Stinson, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity.
La viuda negra, su mirada tierra